I set out to turn 320 acres of wasteland into a desert forest. In that time, I've bought a bulldozer, delivered drill rig doghouses to live in, and I've hired some help along the way. Aside from obvious caveats, I'll consider pretty much any idea that anybody pitches to me if it's going to help me pay for the desert forest. Government grants are obvious. Somebody is going to get that money, and I happen to think, not so humbly, that I should be the one to get the money. I've been working with NRCS just over a year, and they've been out to the property on 3 different occasions. Arbor is my main point of contact, but on this trip, Ryan also joined us. NRCS is considering me for a wildlife grant to pay for installing Beaver Dam Analogs. A beaver dam analog is a human-made beaver dam, and it consists of driving posts into the ground to add structure to the dam. You then weave in organic material like twigs, and in between you add in leaf litter, really any organic material, and mud. You pack that all together nice and tight, and you intentionally don't build it like the Hoover Dam where it arches upstream. You actually want it to arch downstream. Beaver dams are designed to fail. Last summer I started building check dams, and the check dam and the Beaver Dam Analog both serve the exact same purpose. The goal is to obstruct floodwater long enough so that it can soak into the ground. But the only reason I did check dams in the past was because I have tons of rocks, whereas Beaver Dam Analogs are going to require some external inputs. Yeah, if there's one resource I have in abundance, it's rocks.
Yeah.
Got plenty of rock.
So let's use that to our advantage.
Yeah, if I can, like that. I mean, it's the whole reason we did it. It's the stuff right here, and when we build a dam there, we just get the rock from there and move it.
Exactly.
Ryan came with us because he's a state wildlife biologist, and as Texas starts to implement these Beaver Dam analog programs, he came out to assess where we should put them, the spacing, and all the details that go into it, like deciding what kind of posts we're going to use. A grant program encourages me to experiment, and Ryan actually had a really good insight for how we can learn potentially whether check dams or BDAs are a better use of time and money on the Dustups Ranch.
No, I'm thinking because he's already got the little rock rundown structures on that side. And we've talked about the little Beaver Dam analogs. It'd be interesting to not do the Beaver Dam analogs on that side.
Yeah.
A little experimental.
Yeah.
I'd love
do
to.
some on this side and then down at the confluence just to see what
made the most difference.
What differences might be,
Well, but that one also has a road. This one doesn't.
Yeah, that one's going to be cut off, a little bit more than this one is. But I think it'd be interesting to, put 3 or 4 of them up this and then keep going down that side down there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out the spacing of them.
Yeah.
Spacing might be determined by actually where we can place them rather than.
That's what I was kind of looking at
ideally
too.
you want it every quarter mile. It's like
it may be every 100 yards.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what that
Yeah.
ideal spacing is because I haven't planted them yet.
Yeah.
But looking, I'm like, it might not be about how often we want them. It might be about where they
Where you can
go.
put them in.
Right. Yeah. Access is a huge issue.
So,
Right.
I see comments all the time where people have watched YouTube videos talking about the success of working with desert beavers and restoring wetlands and riparian areas. I kind of already knew this, but instead of me, who is not even close to an expert, I'd rather just ask the state wildlife biologist what he thinks. The question I'm dying to ask you is...
that wasn't the beaver one.
That was the lead up, because one of the comment I get, and I know people don't understand it, so a lot of viewers really want to see beavers in this area.
It's not gonna happen. And to me, that's not the goal.
No.
Is to reintroduce or have beavers show back up. My goal is to use, or our goal collectively, is to use what that process structure can do to mimic that.
Because a lot of people have this misconception that to rehydrate a desert, that if you just introduce beavers, magic's going to happen.
Right. We're introducing the concept
Yeah.
of the beaver.
Because Beavers, they're kind of a catalyst. When beavers are present in the area, like that creates so much opportunity for other species then to flourish. It would be a keystone.
Keystone.
Yeah, it's like integral to like the ecosystem there because they create it. You know, it's like its own little kind of microcosm. It's like when they're present, it changes the whole like landscape really of it. So,
Yeah.
So the solution is not to bring beavers. The solution is to be the beaver.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
To me, that's what the goal is.
I'd like to thank Sundays for sponsoring this episode. One is it pays for the Dustups project, but two, my dogs love this dog food. The best thing about this dog food is I don't have to convince my dogs to eat it. When I put other brands in front of them, they'll kind of sniff and paw at it a little bit, and you can tell they're convincing themselves. Whereas with Sundays, they just gobble it down. They're excited to eat. Sundays is so easy to prepare because there's no preparation. If you can scoop kibble out of a bag, you can scoop Sundays out of the bag, except your dog's actually going to like this stuff. It's no surprise the dogs like the food because it's 90% real human grade meat, 10% vegetables, and 0% weird stuff. Get 50% off of your first order of Sundays. Go to sundaysfordogs.com/dustups, or when you're checking out, just use Dustups as your checkout code. That's going to get you 50% off of your first order. A fun benefit to building a relationship with NRCS has been watching Arbor's reaction every single time she comes out to the property. She came out in September, which is pretty close to the peak of the growing season.
That's actually crazy.
And then now on this latest trip, she got to see all of the earthworks that I've done over the winter. And that'll at least let me irrigate these two terraces that I've built. And
Oh yeah, those are new.
yeah, these are brand new.
Goodness, yeah, you're doing a lot of work.
I'm glad it shows because it doesn't feel it's so frustrating. That dozer is 20 years old and it just constantly breaks down. I'm not sure about the exact time frame or process for my application going to a committee and a decision being reached on me getting a grant, but one promise I will make is to keep you updated, either good news or bad news, about that grant status. I just got this letter from USDA as I'm editing the Be the Beaver episode, and I thought, you know what, I ripped up the envelope, but I haven't opened the letter yet. I really ought to videotape myself doing this. So let's see what USDA has to say for me. Basically, I'm eligible. I wasn't raised for a non-reaction. I thought it was going to be, oh, committee decided, you're either disappointed and you're excited. Now it's just, hey, you're in the running. John helped me mark the level lines on the terraces back in January. The upper terrace was very slightly off, so I ran the dozer for 30 minutes to just get everything level. And now that I have my own laser leveling equipment on site, I took the time to double check my work. I'm spot checking with the laser to ensure that the lip of the terrace, which is technically on the downhill side, is higher than the terrace that I cut into the side of the hill. And I want the height of that lip to be higher at all points across the entire length of the terrace. Thankfully, that turned out to be the case. The next step is to build a small spillway for the terrace, and that's when I discovered a hydraulic leak again. Another blown hose. And it's because the sock was off by an inch. Oh boy. That's annoying. Let that drip in the pan. So it should be all done leaking now. I thought I might be able to lift the dozer blade in the air, and that would allow me to drive the dozer to a place where it would be easier to work. I'm in a pretty awkward spot here, and I haven't even finished the road to that point. It's really bumpy and uncomfortable to get access to where the dozer broke down. The advantage to me not being able to move the dozer yesterday is it made me slow down and think more carefully about what I want to do, and I had an epiphany. I might be able to avoid a trip to El Paso. The only reason I hand tightened that plug yesterday was because at the time I hadn't planned on moving it, but it needs to be able to hold up to the hydraulic pressure. If it can hold up to the hydraulic pressure, that means I can use the dozer. I won't be able to have the tilt function, which that hose controls, but that might be good enough for me to function for 2 days and continue making progress without having to waste an entire day going into El Paso and waiting for the hoses to be fabricated. What you're watching now is me getting that plate back off, using the torque wrench to make sure that the cap is correctly sealed. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to test my fix and make sure that the dozer is actually usable with the cap in place. Now I'm going to do the same test as yesterday, where I lift and twist the blade a couple of different ways to pressurize the hydraulics, and I really don't want to see any leaks. As a novice mechanic, I start to doubt my diagnosis. On the last trip, I replaced a hydraulic hose behind this plate. I wondered if perhaps I didn't properly torque the connection behind the plate where the hose meets the plate itself. Those hoses sure look dry to me. As I prepped for the next test, I realized, why is it leaking from the hose that's not connected? Because I don't know enough about hydraulic systems to understand how they operate. What I realized is, well, maybe I didn't torque the plug on the end, but if there's fluid flowing that way, it means that I need to remove the hose entirely and cap the other side, not the hose. I'm going to try that first because I can see the fluid dripping from the hose, which has been draining for an entire night. So that should not be happening. Next step, remove that hose, cap the other side, and then we're going to do the test. It is this connection right here, which is almost impossible to unscrew without, it is impossible to unscrew without removing both this connection and this connection. And hopefully I don't have to take off that elbow, this elbow, because I really need good access to get this. This little $15 wrench to ratchet adapter is probably the most important tool I've bought in the last 6 months. All right, it's loose. I had an epiphany. I realized that the access is totally impossible, and maybe that whole thing removes. And I realized that housing, maybe I should look and see if it's removable. Looks like it is, so I'm going to try that. Once I removed that housing, it was time for a lunch break and a transition down to a higher priority task. My neighbor Bill is going to let me draw a reasonable amount of water from his unused well, and that's only 3 miles from the Dustups Ranch. He actually has grid power down there, but it seems really silly to open an account with the electric company and then only use electricity for 15 minutes every month. It seems way smarter and way more practical to just bring my solar generator with me anytime I want to draw water from the well. The well already has a pump down at the bottom. It's 110 volts. Before I did any of this work that you're looking at, yes, I did check to make sure that the line was cold and that I'm not going to zap myself. All right, so now I just gotta turn on the AC power, and what I'm hoping is that the well turns on. If you hear me yelp, that's hopefully a good thing. It's putting out a ton of power. It's certainly pushing power. There's no power, but it's really sucking the juice. Not sure. I wasn't able to get the pump working. There's a really good chance I didn't wire something correctly. Or maybe that pump that's been sitting in water submerged for more than a decade without being used, maybe it's rusted in place. I don't know. But what I did realize is that there is another well that's maybe 10 yards away, and I can look down the borehole and I can see the water. There's no way it's more than 30 feet. It might even be 15 or 20 feet. This little side project of trying to get the well pump working, I don't need it working on this trip. It's going to be way more efficient for me to buy a brand new pump for $100 to $150 and then just deal with this in March. I don't really need to spend any more time on this now that I know the potentially quick and easy fix isn't quick and easy. I'll come back with something new on the next trip, and I know that's going to work. I cannot wait to see water come out of the ground. That's going to be so exciting, because right now I have to haul any water that I bring comes 38 miles from Sierra Blanca. This is going to cut it down to 3 miles. I got back to the dozer relatively close to sundown, and of course that puts a time limit on the work. The tight access made it very difficult for me to even see what I was doing. I decided that, you know what, it's already hard enough for a novice to make smart decisions. Let's take some time, bring out the pressure washer, and let's clean this up. And that way I have the best chance of actually seeing problems and getting the right tools for the job. These are supposed to be bulkhead fittings, but it's so dirty I can't see anything. Same goes for down there. Like, I can't see where the nuts are. All right, y'all, it is the next day, and I want to show you something that I'm very excited about. A 1 1/8 crow's foot wrench. And the reason I need this is because of the tight access. I think this is literally the only tool that's going to let me get on that bulkhead nut. And then I am hoping and praying that I'm able to torque that off and continue getting the hoses off so that I can get back to making terraces. Man, they did everything possible to make sure that every wrench gets in the way of every other wrench. This is so ghetto. Whoever designed this, I don't have nice things to say. I don't even need this to get off very far. There's a neighboring nut. If I can thread it so that I get it moved about yay far, then that'll let me get an impact socket on it, or really any socket, and then I can drill it off and don't have to keep doing this nonsense. Okay, here it goes. Oh, thank goodness. Thank you, Lord. I have triumphed. What a sad triumph it is, but it is a triumph, and I will take it. Oh, thank God. I'm so happy. That is like ecstasy. I can't believe that's finally over with. At least I got the minimum done. Now, sometimes it's hard for me to do these videos because what I see in my process of replacing that hydraulic hose was an attempted series of shortcuts that ultimately, they didn't cost me much more time, but I guess it instilled a lot of false hope. And the value of me building these videos, aside from helping to pay for building the desert forest, is that it really makes me think critically about what I'm doing and what I can do to improve. I know that going forward, I'm going to do a much better job getting the dozer up and running, but it's a learning process, and here I am doing it on camera, which is the whole promise of the channel. My good friend Daniel did me a favor and was able to get the hydraulic hose and a couple other ones that looked suspicious. He got those fabricated for me while I was away. And now that I'm back on the ranch in March, I'm about to start working on 2 terraces and finishing the spillways that I tried to do in February, but the blown hose prevented me from doing. Thank you for watching.